That night, as Giselle and I walked into the dining hall, my stomach tightened when I saw what appeared to be a sea of men milling around before dinner. In truth, only 5 of the men would be joining us at the table. The rest were merely guards of either our house or the Capellos. The group of 5 had gathered near the hearth. The lord of our house, Jean de Marco, stood, with his and Lady Giselle's 2 sons, Geoffrey and Lucas, who were both older than me by a few years. Lord Jean was a large man, and only recently had some of his muscle begun to sag a little. Glancing in our direction, he offered his wife a nod, but did not acknowledge my presence. He had no love for me. The other 2 men were strangers. One appeared to be late middle-aged, and the other was in his early 30s. A table stretched out in the centre of the hall, laden with goblets, fine pewter plates, and a centrepiece of the last of our autumn roses. Beside me, Lady Giselle drew a long breath as her face transformed into a welcoming smile. She took my arm, and we swept into the vast room. "Gentlemen," she said, approaching the group of 5, "forgive our tardy arrival." This was a polite but expected comment. Women of her station never arrived at a formal dinner before her guests. It was the lord's duty to meet them. Both strangers turned to offer a greeting, but, at the sight of me, the words froze on their lips. I was not taken aback, as this was a normal response from anyone seeing me for the first time. My lady assured me that it was due to my unusual colouring. I was small, slender, and pale-skinned, but my hair was so blonde that she called it silver, and my eyes so crystalline blue that they seemed to glow against the pale background. Once, Lord Jean had shivered as he studied me and said, "She looks like a winter morning." I had long wished for dark hair and brown eyes. Lady Giselle was accustomed to men going speechless at the sight of me, and she pretended not to notice their half-open mouths. "May I present our ward, Cara?" Lord Jean flinched slightly at the term ward, but I was the only one who noticed. Turning to me, Giselle motioned to the men with a graceful hand. "Cara, this is Lord Royce Capello and his son, Lord Royce." Lord Royce must have been past 50, but he was slender and striking, with light brown hair and a close-trimmed beard. He recovered himself quickly, kissing first her hand and then mine. "My ladies," he said, "will be blessed with your company at dinner." Somehow he sounded sincere, and I began to relax a little. Perhaps I would be required to only nod and smile and not answer any difficult questions about my identity. But Royce did not recover so quickly, and continued to stare, running his eyes over my face and silver-blonde hair. He bore little resemblance to his father, taller and more muscular, with sandy blonde hair and a clean-shaven face. I hoped he would not try to engage me in conversation, as I was not nearly so skilled as my lady and had little experience in talking to men. "Shall I ring for dinner so that we might sit?" Giselle asked. Lord Jean nodded to her, and we gathered at the table. To my relief, I was seated between Geoffrey and Lucas. I didn't know them well, but they had long grown accustomed to my appearance, and neither would expect me to talk. Unfortunately, Royce was seated directly across the table, and although he'd stopped staring, he continued glancing in my direction. A number of servants entered the hall carrying trays of food and decanters of wine. Wine was poured, and the fish course was served. I was not fond of wine, but tried to sip politely. "You understand I wish to buy the entire 200 acres?" Lord Jean asked after swallowing a bite of trout. This was the reason for the Capellos' visit. For nearly 3 centuries, the noble de Marco family had boasted one of the most renowned vineyards in the nation of Samurai. They grew mainly white grapes, but of late, demand for white wine had been waning, and Lord Jean had long coveted a large piece of undeveloped land just off our southern border and on the Capellos' northern border. Both its soil and its positioning were perfect for growing the purple grapes of dark red wine. I'd learned all this information from my lady. To date, the Capellos had never responded to any of Lord John's offers, but it appeared the land somehow...